Good morning, everyone. Back in 2014, I worked as a camp counselor at Ionian Village. For those of you that might not know, Ionian Village is a huge summer camp program in Greece with hundreds and hundreds of kids flocking from the United States to attend every year. And the year I was there, for the first 2.5-week session of the camp, I was assigned to be one of the counselors for the oldest boys' cabin, a cabin of about 15 boys that had all just graduated high school and would be attending college in the coming fall. And how did those 2.5 weeks go? It was 2.5 weeks of saklamares. The boys ran crazy like wild men, all over the place. 2.5 weeks of, Christo, I'm hungry. Christo, it's hot. Christo, I don't want to do this. And when they weren't complaining, they were arguing with each other over girls and things like that. One kid wanted to go home, another kid's sneaking off trying to purchase ouzo in Athens somewhere. The list of saklamares went on and on. One time, even while waiting for our group to gather, one of the boys licked my elbow. And when I asked him why he did it, he replied, "Oh, I just wanted to see if you'd notice." 2.5 weeks of saklamares. So the longer the days and the weeks went on, I began to doubt what I was even doing there. Here I was, essentially a babysitter to these kids. And meanwhile, we had been visiting monastery after monastery. We went to Zakynthos to see the body of Saint Dionysios. We went to Kerkyra to see the body of Saint Spiridon. And we went to Kefalonia to see the body of Saint Gerasimos. And we would have nice moments at these holy sites, where all 200 and something kids would wait in line to venerate the saints. And as you can imagine, it takes a long time for 200 people to venerate. So as we would wait, a group of us counselors led by a priest would chant the fancy melody for Kyrie eleison. Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison. Anyway, we chanted this to kind of set the tone for the kids venerating. So we would do this from site to site, but the saklamares went on and on, to the point where I was thinking, you know what, this is a waste. The kids don't care. They're not learning anything. This isn't sinking in for them. But then one day, towards the end of the session, the end of the 2.5 weeks, we had visited a very old monastery high up in a mountain. And as we were walking down the long path back down the mountain after visiting, I saw in the distance a group of my boys from my cabin. They were walking with their arms slung over each other, and I could hear them singing at the top of their lungs, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison. And at that moment, I was overjoyed. I was so happy because at that moment I could see that a little mustard seed of faith had taken root and was growing in them. Despite all the saklamares, all the complaints, all the long days, a seed of faith, albeit perhaps small, had trickled past the distractions and taken root. Something inside these kids had clicked. Their singing was a sign that in some way their faith was active. Their faith was alive. And that's what the beauty of the mustard seed that Christ talks to us about today is. A mustard seed is small, so small that you can barely even see it, really. But even though it is small, it is alive. Notice how Christ doesn't say, if you had faith like a precious diamond, or if you had faith like a strong stone. Because even though a diamond is beautiful and a stone is strong, they are not alive like a mustard seed is. All a mustard seed has to do is take root, and it begins to grow. And as long as it stays active and keeps growing, it can grow into a massive mustard tree. All it takes is one little seed. And what does Christ tell us about what this seed can do? He says, if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move hence to yonder place, and it will move. And nothing will be impossible to you. So we see that even though we may start with a small faith, there is no limit to what our faith can accomplish so long as it is alive. Now, when I was little, I used to stare at this mountain I could see in the distance, Mount Diablo. You can see it in the Sacramento area. I'm not sure if you can see it out here, but I would stare at Mount Diablo. And I would look at it after hearing this gospel passage in church the previous Sunday, and I would just be totally baffled, trying to picture how a mountain could actually move. But while we usually focus on the moving mountains part of this passage, we tend to overlook the powerful message that directly follows it when Christ says, nothing will be impossible to you. This is the meaning of moving mountains with the faith of a mustard seed. The seemingly impossible becomes possible. I remember about 10 years ago when I was in college, when I would go to church on Sunday, I would sneak in and sit in the back few pews at the church in San Diego. I would always listen for the priest's sermon to see if there was something interesting or helpful. And then after church, I would sneak out, hop in my truck, and drive off. If you had told me that one day I would be preaching to people, I would have never believed you. That idea to me would have sounded impossible. Yet fast forward 10 years, and here we are. Now, what took place during that 10 years between the pews and the pulpit seems like a mountain of work, a mountain of learning, and a mountain of experiences. But with my own simple little mustard seed of faith, 10 years later, that mountain has been moved. And now I'm sure each one of you in your own lives can think back to a situation that you used to be in and compare it to the situation you are in now. Perhaps it has to do with creating your own family, or perhaps it has to do with accomplishments in your careers. Either way, you have moved mountains as well. Or perhaps there is a mountain ahead of you that you are intent on moving. All it takes is an active mustard seed, a mustard seed that you water by praying, a mustard seed that you fertilize by staying connected through the church. And your personal mountains will move as well. And just like the boys from my cabin at Ionian Village, no matter how many distractions pull you or how many saklamatis are going on around you, if you are open to God in your lives, that mustard seed can skip past all those other things and take root and begin to grow. One of my favorite examples of this is Saint Porphyrios. Saint Porphyrios is a modern saint who fell asleep just recently in 1991. Saint Porphyrios was indeed a very holy man, but what was unique about Saint Porphyrios was that, unlike many other saints who lived in remote monasteries, Saint Porphyrios lived smack in the middle of the busiest neighborhood in Athens. Now, any of you that have spent time in Athens know how busy it is. It can be an exhausting city, even just after a week-long visit. However, St. Porphyrios spent 30 years as a hospital chaplain in Athens, and he said his 30 years there were so joyous that they passed as if they were a single day. Despite all the madness of Athens, St. Porphyrios remained rooted in faith. We all have a mountain in front of us right now. The road back to church seems impossibly long. We have no idea when the restrictions will be lifted, and we have no idea what the new normal will look like. However, if we keep our seeds of faith alive, this mountain too will be moved. For with active faith in God, nothing is impossible for us. Amen.